Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Georgia Overbeck. Today's video is going to be about how I read 10 books in 3 months and my tips on how to start reading more, and then also the 10 books that I've read so far in this year. If my voice sounds different, I don't know why, but I have lost my voice a little bit over the last couple of days, so if it sounds weird, that's why. But I still am going to get a video out for you guys, even if I sound like this. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know by liking and commenting and subscribing if you're not yet, and let's get into it. So first thing that I want to say is my favorite genre of books to read is self-help books. So first of all, a tip to start reading more would be to prioritize reading and use your time wisely. Make it your hobby. So think about it, you can use your time either by playing video games or watching TV or scrolling on TikTok or Instagram. You could watch a 45-minute show or you could read for 45 minutes. It's all about what's important to you and making it a priority. Second tip is to add it into your routine. If you're already somebody who has a routine, like for example, maybe you have a morning routine or a night routine, then add reading into that. So for me, I have a morning and a night routine and I read in both. So usually I'll wake up in the morning and I'll read right away. I prefer to read before I go on my phone in the mornings. And then usually it's the last thing I'll do before I go to bed in the evening as well. But your routine might be different. Like maybe it's when you're at work and you get a break, maybe you could read at that time. You could make that part of your break routine. I know that sometimes people, when they do cardio at the gym, like say for example, you're on the Stairmaster or the treadmill or the bike, I see sometimes people will have books and while they're doing their cardio, they'll be reading. So find a part of your routine that you already have where you can easily add reading into. Tip number 3 would be to start with a shorter book to build your confidence with reading. A few of the books that I've read so far this year, which I will say soon, were shorter reads, and I find that those are better to build up your confidence with reading because you finished a book. Once you finish one book, you're going to be more motivated to continue reading. So find a shorter book in a genre that you like to build that confidence. Tip number 4 is to join a reading challenge or a book club or set a goal. So for me, I saw a reading challenge on Pinterest at the beginning of the year, and it was a list of 40 books that are apparently the best personal development books. And so I set a goal and took the challenge to read all 40 in 2023. Now your goal might not be 40. It might be to finish 10 in the year, or it might be to finish 12 or 3 or 50 or whatever it is for you. But having that goal will help you to stay disciplined and motivated towards hitting it. Another good one, talking about the book club, is to find your friends or your family or even a book club on social media that is reading similar books to what genre you like, and then join that, and then you'll have the accountability of other people as well reading with you. And then you can talk about the book together too, which is always fun. Number 5 is to read when you're traveling. I haven't traveled this year yet, but one of my favorite things to do when I'm on a plane or in a long car ride is to read. I find that that is one of the best times because you can put in your headphones and make everything quiet and just focus on what you're reading. And often, depending on how long your flight is, you could finish a whole book in that time. So I definitely recommend, if you have time when you're traveling, take advantage of that to read. And then the last tip I have is to share the books that you're reading once you finish them. That's a big reason why I started doing my book reviews on Instagram, because once I finish a book, it's kind of I can tell people what I learned from it, but also it'll keep me accountable to make sure that I'm finishing those books, because now people expect those book reviews from me. And of course, you don't have to put up full book reviews like I do on Instagram. You could even just take a picture of the book that you finished, post it to your story and say, oh, I loved this book, or finished this today, or definitely recommend reading this, and just starting that small act of posting it, because it's going to make you more accountable to reading more books. So those are my tips on how to start reading and to be more consistent with it. I thought I would quickly go through the 10 books that I've read so far this year. I have this little book journal that I recently got from Goodwill, and I've been using this to track all of the books that I've been reading. That would be another tip too, is to keep track of all the books that you're reading. Again, it's another way to build your confidence because like for me, I've read 10 books so far this year. And that's, I think, a great accomplishment is 10 books in 3 months. But if I didn't really keep track of it, I wouldn't know. I would probably be guessing. So that would be a good idea, is to either get a book journal or write a list on your phone in the notes app of all the books that you've read recently. So then you can look back on them and be proud of the books that you've read. Okay, so I have my list of books that I read here, and the first one that I read this year was Big Magic. I believe it's by Elizabeth Gilbert, and I have to say that this was a great book to start the year with. It was very much about creative living and being your true self and not being afraid to be who you are. I really loved this book. It was very different from other books that I've read because usually the self-help books that I read are very like business oriented or very like masculine almost, that they're like work all the time, hustle, no rest kind of thing. And I feel like Elizabeth's book was a little bit different in that it was like more feminine in a way, I guess. I really enjoyed it and I definitely recommend. The second book that I read was The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, or Tolle. I'm not sure how to say his last name, but this one was really good. I also read his other book called A New Earth. I kind of read these ones back to back, and I think that that was a good idea. They are more about like spirituality and self-help. If you are into spirituality and manifesting and the universe and your higher self and stuff like that, I definitely recommend reading those two. Nice change from what I usually read, so I'm glad that I read those. The next one was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I've actually read years ago The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens by Stephen Covey's son, and I really enjoyed that book. That was actually the book that first got me into self-help books. And so it was kind of cool that I'm at the age where I can understand the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People now, the original one. I really enjoyed this. I got some great tips and takeaways from it. It's a good classic self-help book. I would say that it would be good for everyone to read. So if you haven't read that one yet, I would recommend. Next one I read was Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. And this one was more similar to Big Magic in that I felt like it had a more feminine way of writing and I really enjoyed it. I really like Brene Brown's style of writing and her book. Again, it was similar to Big Magic in being who you are and being confident and being vulnerable, and I really enjoyed it. Then I read The Emotional Advantage by Randy Taryn, and I loved this book. I think it was one of my favorites of the year so far. She goes in depth about all the different emotions that we experience as humans and how they're all good, how they can all be helpful for us, including emotions that are usually thought of as negative, like sadness or anger or jealousy. She kind of goes in those and says how they could actually be helpful and how we can use them in a good way. Next was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. This one had a very similar vibe to the 7 Habits book in that it felt like a good classic self-help book. Again, if you haven't read that one, I definitely would recommend to as well. Next was The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy, and I really enjoyed this one too. It was all about how important small steps can be to reach our goals and daily habits and compounding. I really enjoyed this. If you've read Atomic Habits before and you enjoyed that book, I would recommend checking out The Compound Effect as well. Number 9 is Elevate Your Team by Robert Glazer, and I really liked this one as well. It definitely was more like for a business owner, which I am not yet, but one day I hope to be. It was kind of talking about how to get your employees and your team members to elevate in all aspects of life, like not just their work, but their life in general. And so I found a lot of takeaways for me as just a person of things that would be beneficial for me to elevate my life. And I learned a lot from it. And then the last book that I read was The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. This one was one of the books that was very short. And if you're new to like spirituality books, then I would recommend reading The 4 Agreements because it is short and it's right to the point and you can learn a lot from it. I really enjoyed this book. Again, I liked that it was short and it was a quick read, but I still got a lot. And those are the 10 books that I've read so far in 2023. As I'm filming this, it is March 9th. So that means that we're about 3 months, almost 3.5 months into 2023, and I'm on my 11th book. So I think that I'm right on schedule to hit my 40, which is good. Thank you so much for watching this video and for sticking with me even with my weird voice. I hope that you enjoyed this video and got a few tips from it. I would love to know what book you are currently reading or what book you want to start reading after watching this video. Have a fabulous day, and I hope to see you in my next one.